The houses on Kavana Avenue were still dark when Christmas Eve began in Modesto, but inside the Peterson home, small movements signaled the start of the day. Laci Peterson, 8 months pregnant, comfortable in her routine, moved through the kitchen preparing a simple breakfast. She had a full day planned. She wanted to bake cookies for the family gathering, straighten up the living room, and take Mackenzie, the couple's golden retriever, on his usual morning walk. The holiday was her favorite time of year, and she was only weeks away from meeting her son. It was supposed to be a morning built around anticipation. Scott Peterson stepped out of the bedroom carrying fishing gear, telling Laci he planned to head to the Berkeley Marina. He spoke casually, as if it were any other weekend instead of Christmas Eve. The choice struck some later as odd. Friends would recall that Laci expected him home early to help prepare for the evening festivities. Still, with no argument heard by neighbors, the morning appeared uneventful. Scott loaded his truck, backed out of the driveway, and disappeared down the street. Around 10 a.m., a neighbor spotted Mackenzie wandering the neighborhood alone, leash still clipped to his collar. It wasn't alarming at first. Mackenzie was friendly and harmless, but it was out of character for Laci not to be close by. The dog was returned to the Petersons' yard. No one knew that the leash, still attached and dragging on the ground, would become a critical detail in the timeline of Laci's disappearance. When Scott came home early that afternoon, he walked into a silent house. He later told detectives he found no sign of Laci, only her car in the driveway, her purse in the closet, and a mop and bucket near the kitchen as if she had been mid-cleaning. Scott showered almost immediately, washed the clothes he had been wearing, and called Laci's mother, asking if she was there. Sharon Rocha felt dread before she even finished answering. Her daughter never vanished without a word. She didn't miss calls. She didn't ignore family. Something felt wrong. Sharon pushed Scott to call police. Officers arrived quickly, examining the home with a careful eye. Nothing looked broken. There were no signs of struggle, no forced entry, but the absence of chaos didn't ease their concerns. Laci's wallet, phone, and keys were still inside. A woman that pregnant didn't simply wander off. Detectives began to believe either Laci left the home briefly and never returned, or she never left the home at all. By evening, search teams had spread across Modesto. Volunteers walked fields and canals with flashlights, calling Laci's name into the cold air. Helicopters scanned orchards and waterways. News stations broadcast her photo across the state. The community rallied, spreading flyers, organizing search grids, and holding vigils. Scott stood beside Laci's family at early press conferences, but investigators noticed an unsettling flatness in his demeanor. His voice lacked urgency. His expression rarely changed. He spoke carefully, almost rehearsed, answering questions without the emotional volatility expected from a missing woman's husband. Detectives began digging deeper into Scott's life. That was when the first fracture appeared. A tip led them to Amber Frey, a massage therapist from Fresno, who revealed that she had been dating Scott for over a month. She believed he was single. The most disturbing detail came when Amber explained that Scott had told her, before Laci disappeared, that he had lost his wife, and this would be his first Christmas without her. The date of that conversation was etched into her memory. December 9th, 2 weeks before Laci vanished. Amber agreed to work with investigators, recording dozens of calls with Scott. In the recordings, he spoke softly, telling her he was far from home in Europe for the holidays, describing sights and events that were entirely fabricated. At the same time, he was standing in a community at the center of a frantic search for his pregnant wife. Detectives listened to his calm voice across hours of recordings and saw in them a chilling absence of panic. As weeks passed, investigators focused their efforts on the San Francisco Bay. Scott's alibi hinged on the claim that he had been fishing alone on Christmas Eve. He gave precise details: where he launched the boat, how long he stayed, and where he had drifted. Search teams dragged the water with sonar, battling cold weather and unpredictable currents. Nothing appeared at first, but detectives did not let go of the theory that the bay held the key. Through January and February, Scott was observed visiting the marina repeatedly. He sat in his truck for long stretches facing the water. Investigators wondered if he was waiting for something to wash ashore. Meanwhile, the public's suspicion grew. The media attention was relentless. Laci's family appeared at every vigil, their grief intensifying as days passed without answers. Sharon Roach's pleas for her daughter grew sharper, more desperate, while Scott's behavior seemed increasingly disconnected from the family's anguish. In early April, the tide shifted, literally and figuratively. A couple walking their dog near Point Isabel spotted a tiny body on the shoreline. It was the remains of a fetus. The next day, a partial female torso washed ashore barely a mile away. Both remains were badly decomposed, but DNA testing confirmed the truth everyone feared. The fetus was Laci's unborn son, and the torso belonged to Laci. The location was exactly where Scott said he had been fishing. 4 days later, police arrested Scott near a golf course in San Diego. He had dyed his hair blonde, carried nearly $15,000 in cash, multiple cell phones, camping gear, and his brother's driver's license. Officers believed he was preparing to flee across the border. The arrest ended the search and began the homicide investigation in full. The 2004 trial drew massive public attention. Prosecutors argued Scott killed Laci in their home and transported her body to the bay. They relied heavily on circumstantial evidence: the affair, the lies to Amber, the sudden change in behavior, and the bodies found precisely where Scott had traveled that morning. They painted him as a man who wanted a new life without the obligations of fatherhood and saw murder as his escape. The defense insisted there was no direct proof, no blood, no witness, no confirmed crime scene. They suggested Laci may have encountered danger while walking the dog. They raised questions about burglaries in the neighborhood, but jurors were ultimately persuaded by Scott's pattern of deception. The recorded phone calls, the fabricated holiday trip, and the timing of the remains were too difficult to dismiss. Scott Peterson was convicted of first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for their unborn son. He received the death penalty. To Laci's family, the verdict brought a measure of justice, but no real comfort. They remembered her as warm, kind, quick to laugh, and thrilled to become a mother. They filled the courtroom with memories of a life cut short. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott's death sentence due to flaws in jury selection, but upheld his conviction. He now serves life without parole. The case remains one of the most scrutinized homicides in modern America, replayed in documentaries, podcasts, and legal debates, analyzing every detail, from motive to timeline to evidence. Yet beyond the theories and arguments, the heart of the story remains the same. A young pregnant woman vanished on a quiet holiday morning, a community searched relentlessly for her, and the truth that emerged fractured her family forever. The tragedy reshaped how the nation sees trust, deception, and the fragile safety of suburban life. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.